Employee engagement is defined as how supervisors set expectations with employees and then how those employees are resourced by the organization to complete tasks. According to Shahid, a framework of employee engagement must include a positive environment, leadership that contributes to their employees professionally and personally, the work that is purposeful, and employees enjoying autonomy in completing their goals. These elements will solidify the level of an employee's engagement. In higher education, employee engagement is an important vehicle to determine student engagement and financial outcomes. If employees feel a sense of purpose in their work, that attitude will transfer to students. While Solowski found that employee engagement is at the lowest levels in higher education, leadership does not seem to be focused on engaging their employees through the above drivers. Instead, they are working towards doing more with less. The interviews in this video are with higher education professionals. 3 are advisors and 1 is a director. As you will be able to see from the first 2 interviews, these professionals have little understanding of employee engagement. The final 2 videos have more understanding of employee engagement. However, this awareness of employee engagement may be due to their professional levels rather than their experiences. Please enjoy the first 2 videos of how these professionals define and explain employee engagement.
We have not much of an idea, but that's not a term that I've heard often. In my head, I would kind of mirror it to student engagement, I suppose, so how students are connected and worked with at the institution. In my mind, then it would become how employees are connected to either their own unit that they work in or the institution, the level by which they feel connected to their jobs or involved with what they do. But I have no idea if that's accurate. I think it probably depends on what unit you're a part of. So I'll speak just for my own. But in academic advising, since we came through the semester transition 2 years ago, sorry for that pause there, 1 year ago, where are we? We just finished our first year. So it does feel like 2 because we've advised 2 full calendar years worth of classes, but we're 1 year in. It feels pretty high for our unit since we've taken on such a big role in that process, whether it's creating the individual transition plans or having these one-on-one meetings with students throughout. The semester transition feels pretty engaged with, as long as I defined employee engagement correctly. Yeah. We don't have a director of our unit, so I'll speak towards the people above even that. So within academic affairs, at least, would assume that they have a relatively big role. Advising has always been given, for better or for worse, a lot of autonomy in what we do, which I think means we have to be engaged in our work. And thankfully, we have a staff that really appreciates that autonomy and responsibility within the guidance of those that work above. I could also say, I know we've been asked recently what other types of professional development opportunities we would like, if possible. No one knows if we'll be traveling with conferences or what virtual conferences might look like, but that's been at least an opportunity for discussion. I don't know what it would take, but I think that could help people remain more engaged as well if they knew that there was additional ways to fold opportunities into their work for additional engagement, and that comes from the top down as well. The last half year with the pandemic's been a little bit weird, I think, but we'll see. I imagine so, especially since advising is so cyclical. There are different times of the year in our unit where we probably feel more connected or more monotonous and routine. There's less opportunity for any things that are creative or more individual type projects at certain times of the year. It kind of feels like a grin and bear it. I would imagine that a lot of advising units feel the same. In the summer with 800 individual appointments has felt very, let's get through this and make each appointment as good as possible, but we're going to set the rest of what we do kind of to the side.
Engagement is really working with your peers to kind of build that camaraderie and teamwork and kind of engaging with each other to work with each other to improve yourself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I feel like one of the most important things about being an employee and working with other employees is really building those relationships with your other employees, just because you want to have a good work environment. And I've been at places where I haven't had that good work environment. And being at North Central, I've had nothing but positive experiences, especially working with you and working with Levon and then moving to advising. I feel like we all work really well together and kind of help each other out. If we have questions or just to kind of vent about things, it's nice to be engaged with those employees.
Do you?
I don't know about other offices. I wish I worked more closely with some other offices on campus, but I feel like in advising, we work really well together. I wish, yeah, and hopefully when we're back on campus, we can work more closely with some of those other offices. I know we work with the registrar's office a lot, admissions, but I would like to branch out and work with other offices to kind of see what they do and how they can help me improve in my job. But yeah, I think within our advising unit, it's really good. I love everyone that I work with. And we do work really closely with like Mindy and the registrar's office. So I think I have a good relationship with all of them. But yeah, I would like to branch out and know more people on campus. I don't work too closely with the administration. I know that at North Central they have a campus coffee. So I know they try to get employees to kind of meet other, once a week at campus coffee. But yeah, I haven't seen,
Right.
I'm trying to think. Like Julie, working with her is great as an administration. It does fluctuate with advising because there are times where we are so busy meeting with students that we don't really have time to, meet with other offices, or even just getting a weekly meeting in once a week is hard because we are so many meetings. So certain times of the year, like fall advising, we're going to be meeting with students constantly for a few weeks. Over the summer, we've been meeting with first year students the entire time. So it's been really hard remotely to have employee engagement. I feel like we're kind of on our own remotely. So certain times of the year, definitely. Like summer, we are busy with orientation, then fall advising. So there are times where we can't even get to campus coffee because we have meetings all the time. And so it's certain times of the year, yeah, we don't engage with other offices as much.
As you can see from these two interviews, both participants did discuss some elements of employee engagement. They recognized the importance of having a meaningful role in the process. Their unit of advising took on a huge amount of work transitioning students from old to new curriculums and calendars. They were both able to see how they were valued in the institution and trusted in this vital role. Both participants also discussed having autonomy as a positive experience. The advising unit was able to set up processes to assist students in choosing their classes. Both were engaged in that work and took pride in it. Both participants talked about having a positive environment at work. The staff thrived in their autonomous role and the meaningful work. They were able to help students make a major transition in their curriculum. The interviewees also felt valued by their supervisor. Leadership recently asked what professional development opportunities that the staff would like. While these two individuals did not define employee engagement, it was evident they knew what employee engagement was. Their lack of knowledge may be because of their current titles or that their leaders have never engaged their employees in the past. Nazir and Islam determined that employee engagement was higher at colleges that had leadership who supported their employees both professionally and personally. As you can see from these two interviews, both participants felt supported by their supervisor.
Define employee engagement? Okay. I guess I would say that, okay. How would I define employee engagement? At North Central specifically or in general?
In general.
In general, okay. I would define employee engagement as getting the employee engagement is the process of getting all the people on a team to have feel like they're stakeholders, to feel like their contribution is meaningful, to feel like their voices are heard, and to have those voices be reflected in the decision making of the organization as a whole. Employee organization at North Central is, I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it 7 or 8, something like that. I know there's a lot of different kinds of like moving parts in terms of like the governance, and there's the big faculty committees, and there's all the different schools and stuff like that. So there's a lot to there's just a lot of different kind of like areas that people can easily fall into, and it's sort of if you're in one corner of the campus, you might not see things the way they are at the other end of campus. And it's just sort of naturally part of that. But I would say that overall employee engagement is pretty good. There's a lot of there seems to be a lot of opportunity to have your voice heard, for sure. North Central's leadership has been really okay. Sorry. As I started to say that, I started thinking about when I was adjuncting too. So I started like all of a sudden, it's like a whole different side of the entire question. So one thing I can definitely say about working at North Central is that in every position I've had, as an adjunct, as an academic advisor, those kinds of things, I've really felt like the people who brought me on board really looked out for me professionally. I felt like I've had really good advice, and that my voice has been heard as a professional. That it wasn't just the fact that I kind of punched in and did my job and then went home. I've the people that I've worked for in academic departments, in the advising unit, have really taken an interest in making sure that I was happy and making sure that I was developing myself professionally, not just within the context of the position that I had, but in a big, longer term kind of a strategy. And I felt like that also affected the kinds of things that we did kind of going forward with that stuff. If that makes sense.
It does. And my final question, does your own employee engagement fluctuate? Why or why not?
My own employee engagement definitely fluctuates because just because of the natural rhythm of the year. We never really have like a way to like close a chapter and like cleanly move on to the next. It always tends to blend from one phase of like we really need to work on this problem to the next phase we really need to work on this other problem. So that part is that part can be a challenge to maintain high morale, those kinds of things. And that's really where I think the leadership is super important, especially at the unit level, that you have people who are kind of like not only looking at the big picture, but also like how is that actually translating to on the ground kind of thing.
Define employee engagement as learning who you work with and getting them involved, whether that's within your department or within the institution, and trying to get them to understand kind of that community value that North Central has. And so that engagement can look very different for very different departments. Institution, I think we could do a better job of that. I think it's left to the departments and the individual supervisors to really manage that. And so I think in our division, in our department, I think we have a lot of an employee engagement, but I'm not sure that that's across the board. Tone. I think if they're at events or they're supporting their colleagues for things that are important to them, that's going to help other people show up in different ways. So I think they need to model that behavior. I think demands on time is a significant issue. And I also think based on the academic calendar, I mean, as an institution, we know beginning of the year, homecoming, end of the year is where we see that engagement. But what happens in between those dates that can really be effective?
In these two interviews, the participants seemed to understand what employee engagement was. Again, it may be due to their positions and experiences they had with their own leadership. These participants seem to follow Sahid's definition of employee engagement. They believe employee engagement is working with the unit employees to find meaning in their work. The interviewees also felt that an important element of employee engagement was having their voices heard by leadership and then their thoughts reflected in leadership decisions. I found it interesting that in the interviews, the participants all reported their employee engagement fluctuates. They feel less engaged with their organizations when they are more busy. According to Brevard, Backer, Hetland, DeMurrody, Olson, and Epsvik, the type of leadership that management uses can affect employee engagement. If a leader uses transformational leadership, regardless of the busyness of the job, employee engagement is utilized to reach goals. However, if the leader uses transactional leadership, employees do not feel engaged in their work. Perhaps during busier times of the year, when the employees are not engaged, it is because of the transactional nature of their relationships. They just need to complete tasks instead of engaging in the work. In these two interviews, the participants seemed to understand what employee engagement was. Again, it may be due to their positions and experiences they had with their own leadership. These participants seem to follow Sahid's definition of employee engagement. They believe employee engagement is working with the unit employees to find meaning in their work. The interviewees also felt that an important element of employee engagement was having their voices heard by leadership and then their thoughts reflected in leadership decisions. I found it interesting that in the interviews, the participants all reported their employee engagement fluctuates. They feel less engaged with their organizations when they are more busy. According to Brevard, Backer, Hetland, DeMurrody, Olson, and Epsvik, the type of leadership that management uses can affect employee engagement. If a leader uses transformational leadership, regardless of the busyness of the job, employee engagement is utilized to reach goals. However, if the leader uses transactional leadership, employees do not feel engaged in their work. Perhaps during busier times of the year, when the employees are not engaged, it is because of the transactional nature of their relationships. They just need to complete tasks instead of engaging in the work.